This is the Authority Company Podcast, conversations with leaders that are designing our future. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and today we're going to get into how faith, corporate America, and the military have shaped Deborah E. McGee's life. Deb is the author of the new book, The Leadership Attitude, where she shares her experiences before and after starting her company, PZI, which delivers end-to-end global employment and human capital solutions. Deborah, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So I want to start by talking about faith. So I grew up, Deb, going to Catholic school, 1st through 6th grade, basically learning about God and then like social studies at the same time, which I always thought was kind of weird. But as I've gotten older, I've sort of like tried to thread the needle of like faith and business because I haven't read the Bible in a long time, Deb, but I don't remember a point in it where Jesus taught us how to fire people or to lay off mass amounts of human beings. So and I understand your faith is incredibly important to you. How do you grasp those two things, like the idea of your faith, but also the cold, hard facts of business?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's interesting because I was talking to someone recently and I said, Jesus did say, give Caesar's what is Caesar's and give God what is his. I mean, you're kind of in there at the very beginning of it.
Right. So how do you deal with it as a business leader?
I pray a lot. That's the best way I can say it. And I wish I could say that I've always been really strong in my faith, in my business. That was not always the case. I've always been a strong faith person. But like most professionals, especially, let's face it, I am a baby boomer, and a female baby boomer. So, that wasn't really encouraged in our professional upbringing. And I went right along with it. I was not probably the person that I should have been. Definitely not the person I am today. I'm a much better leader. I always tell some, senior managers when I run across them that were maybe worked for me as a staff years ago, I go, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was such a crappy leader back then. But, coming back to why it's so important, I think understanding that people are people and not treating them as a piece of property or something to use to get ahead or, something that you got to have, and really understanding the person for who they are and what drives them, what helps them. And that's what really excites me about owning my own business. I get the opportunity to watch young professionals grow and do things that they've never done before. And not just, I say young professionals might not be young in age, but young in their careers.
That's so cool. And so let's talk about you talked about how the fact that you probably weren't the best leader early on in your life, and you've gone on this journey to write the leadership attitude. Tell me about those reflective moments that improved your leadership in terms of like, were there a couple moments that you had like, oh man, if I had a do-over, not that we ever have a chance to, but if I have a do-over on that one, that now makes you a great leader because you learned from that experience?
Huge. It was one of the most impactful things to me was when I found out that one of my team thought that I was taking credit for their work. Had told someone else that they felt I took credit for their work. And I thought about that and I said, wow, that's horrible. I mean, I would hate for someone to think they took credit for my work. So, but I realized what I had done was not always, because I'm a kind of direct person. So I'm not always the best at patting people on the back and saying they did a good job. I grew up in the era of, well, if you didn't do a good job, I'd fire you. So things have changed a lot. But I've really come back to now looking at that and going, I could have done a much better job of telling someone, you did a really great job on that. If we can change maybe this one thing, it'd be even better versus, no, I don't like it like that. Change it and do it this way. Or not even telling someone that, oh, by the way, that was so-and-so's idea. That was the staff's idea. It just became we, and that we, since I was a leader, was me.
I love that. And the title of the book is Leadership Attitude. And I want to do a little rhyming thing. I think attitude is more important than platitudes. I feel like, going back to your point though, I think people feel like leadership is just saying how great everybody is or pointing out. But like, to me, and I'm a Gen Xer, Deb, I don't need platitudes. I don't need a rewards. Just be respectful of how I work and me as a human being.
Yes.
Talk about that, like that leadership attitude, because I think that's to me the most important thing. Like you mentioned, you learned from that experience of not giving platitudes, but in the same regard, maybe you weren't being as respectful as you thought you should be or whatever. But tell me about that, about like this world where now that people think that just using platitudes is a replacement for being a leader.
I think, Joe, that's where it comes hard to being your authentic self. You can't fake it. People know when you're faking it. People know who you are. And if you're one person at the office and you turn around in a meeting and you be somebody else, they pick up on it. So I say always be authentic, be who you are, and be open. People actually need to know that, gosh, you really sucked at something. Because I think sometimes when you become the leader, people just assume it was always that way. And I mean, like I said, I'm a boomer and I'm a military spouse. So I moved many times, raised 3 kids, did all that stuff. People go, well, I love the phrase my husband says, well, women want their cake and eat it too. And I go, well, let me tell you, you can eat that cake, but you've also probably got to make the cake. You've got to decorate your cake. And if you're lucky, you might eat that cake at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, that's a great one. I bet your husband probably didn't have much to say after that one.
No, he knows my feelings.
Good. I want to talk about the shift you made from a corporate to becoming an entrepreneur and owning your own business, because I think for a lot of people, that's about as scary as it gets. I mean, number one is probably losing your job, but two, the idea of like leaving the comfort of that sort of either corporate or company or business sort of pillow that you have of like, hey, I just got to do my one thing, and if I do it really well, I'll, God willing, I'll keep a job. But when you're an entrepreneur, you could do everything right, Deb, as you know, and your company could still go under. So tell me about the sort of motivation to leave corporate life and go on your own.
Wow. I wish I could say that I was an entrepreneur who says, you know what, I can do it better myself. I'm going out on my own and hanging up my own shingle. That was not me. That was not me. Okay. So actually, I like a lot of senior executives, reorganization happens and I was severed. And I go, okay, I've been 25 years in the international major leagues. What do I do now? I plan to go to the lake and drink margaritas. That was my game plan. But kind of the shift in my attitude really happened because of that. I joke about it in my book that God gave me a timeout, because I took some time and I started reading the Bible for the first time, probably in 25 years. I'm a Christian, but it doesn't mean that I was as strong as I needed to be. And I started studying, and wow, I saw so many realities between what I was reading thousands of years ago, someone was dealing with, and what I was dealing with in an organization. It's crazy. This is just crazy. And then things just started happening. People started finding out what I did, and they wanted help with this, and I thought it might be a little bit of a consulting, what we do, we consult. Um, Now it's 6 companies, it's a multi-million-dollar group, and we're in 26 countries.
Wow.
Insane.
Amazing.
I like to believe that God gave me a gift for entrepreneurship. He gave me intelligence and a great background, and I'm just using it to help other people.
That's so cool. And on the subject of God, obviously, if anyone's consuming this conversation, they can tell we're both Christian. But
Yeah.
how does faith-based leadership work in a world where not everybody's Christian, not everyone is spiritual?
You
Some
don't
people
have
are
to be. Absolutely. You don't
atheists.
have to be a Christian to work for me, for goodness sakes. Absolutely not. I've had plenty of atheists work for me. And that's perfectly okay. It's how we treat people. It truly is about the platinum rule, not just treat people the way you want to be treated, but treat them the way they want to be treated. Find out who they are, connect with them, adapt to them, make little tweaks to you to make life better for them. And in reality, it makes life better for the whole team.
That's great. That's great. You mentioned you recently, well, when you launched their companies, you read the Bible again. Are there any?
About 5 times. I'm like, I can't. It keeps me sustained. It's like I joke that it's my armor. Every day I put on my armor, because I have to slay the corporate dragons out there. So I put on my armor.
Oh, that's great. And so, are there any kind of maybe one or two you could point out lessons from the Bible that are most applicable to now modern leadership? Is there one or two that jump out? Is there? Can we tie those together?
Oh my gosh, tons. I was rereading something recently in Exodus, and something so simple, Miriam. So the story of Miriam putting Moses' mother putting them in the Nile, and the Egyptian princess that finds Moses, but little Miriam, who couldn't have been more than probably 11 or 12 years old, was following it and saw an opportunity to go tell that princess. I mean, she's 11-year-old little girl, and here's an Egyptian princess, to go up to her and go, hey, I know someone who might can help feed that baby for you. Took that opportunity and kept her family together. I mean, why can't we take opportunities when they're presented to us? Why are we so afraid of saying, well, I could probably do that? And a lot of my business is exactly that. Why not us? We could do that. We pray about it. But we could probably do that. So we take that opportunity. And then take Moses, for goodness sakes. Moses had a stuttering problem. He couldn't even speak. And God wants him to go to Pharaoh and take the entire population of Israel out of Egypt. Oh my gosh. He said, not me, not going to happen. I don't think so. Go find somebody else. And eventually he said yes. And he gave him his brother, who could help him talk, because he had a stuttering problem and wasn't a speaker, but his brother was. God just does that. He just puts things together, but you gotta be willing, Joe. I think, in business, that's one of the things for an entrepreneur is it's why we are who we are, because we are willing to take that risk that nobody else necessarily will take. There's always the reason. I've got a family. I can't leave my job. I've got to pay the mortgage. I got the kids. When the kids get out of school, I'll do this. There's always a reason. But why not just say yes?
You talk about family, and I feel like one thing that, I think a lot of people shit on Gen Z and millennials for a lot of reasons, but one thing that they do really well that I really am respectful of is the fact that they've really embraced the idea of a work-life balance. Something that's been
Life-work balance.
Life-work balance. Okay, so let's dig into that, because, like I said, younger people sort of have sort of been able to construct that in a healthy way, but for other generations, it's always been tough. So you talk about your family, your faith, your business, the fact that you were also a military spouse, all of this. What have you done to make it all work?
Sure. I don't sleep a lot. So in my younger years, 24 hours, I have to have at least 7 now. I have to have 6 to 7 hours of sleep. But I prioritize things when they need to prioritize, and I ask for help. I've always asked for help. I would ask for help on the carpool if I had to show up at work earlier. Hey, friend, can you maybe pick them up from the soccer field, and I'll pick them up next time. Those are things that are easy to do. And I think understanding how life work balance, and I'm glad to see that I have actually raised 3 millennials. I am so proud of them because they have better life work balance than their father or I ever did.
Well, parenting though, I think that's probably you got to give yourself some credit for that. And in speaking and on the subject of credit and culture, the PCI group, how do you foster the principles that sort of guide the company with that? Because what's the old joke, like culture is what happens when no one's looking kind of thing? Because a lot of companies, they have the posterized values, they have things that, a handbook that they say that they hand out to their employees. But what are some of the simple parts of your values? And I think you kind of hinted at them earlier about, treating the platinum rule, treating people kind. But what are some of those underlying values? Because I feel like sometimes when it comes to this, and I've never been an entrepreneur, so I'm just speaking to entrepreneurs, is I think we overcomplicate culture. Like my values are work hard, be nice to people. That's too short for a company value T-shirt or poster. So no one's going to use that. But what are some of those values that you instill that, again, is that culture happening when you're not around?
I love that you say that it's too short for a corporate culture statement. I think it's perfect. And I think that's where I see more companies going to. Truly, our mission is very simple. We support people. That's all we do. I mean, our PZI stands for people zealously interconnected. And zealous is another word for passion, Joe. So we are passionate about people. We are passionate about supporting people, about making sure that people get what they need, whatever situation it is. So why would we do that outside of the company and not inside of the company? Whenever the individuals first come to work for me, they immediately get a self-awareness assessment, so that one, we know who they are, they know who they are, they become more self-aware. We want to be intentional about how we connect and adapt to each other. That's what makes us so amazing. And I am very fortunate. The culture at PCI, I won't take the credit for it, because it truly is one of those things kind of happened when I wasn't looking, and I love it because it's so much better than I ever could have made it. I mean, they're connected. They take time for each other, they support each other, they laugh, they play. Yes, they work hard, but they play hard too. If you ever follow us on LinkedIn, you kind of see we work hard, but we play hard.
That's awesome. In the book, you write about informal leadership in an organization. And I've heard this before about people, like, they don't actually have to have a title to be a leader within. But tell me about that importance of informal leadership within your company, and what could be important for other companies as well.
Sure. And I think, Joe, that was really something that I learned after being a formal leader for 25 years. That was not the best way to do it. There was always informal leaders. There was always those with influence. A formal leader doesn't really have while they have the title, they really can't make things happen without influencers underneath them. They have to have those influencers, and those influencers help them to do whatever it is that they're trying to do. And so when we talk about informal leadership, we're really talking about those influencers, those individuals that, take whatever it is you're going to say as the leader and help the others go, hey, get behind this. This is going to be great. We're going to do all these wonderful things. This is how we can do it. Or better yet, they come to the formal leader and go, this is not going to work. Let me tell you why this is not going to work. And they help to influence the formal leader as well.
Wow, that's cool. And in terms of your leadership style, so my wife and I just celebrated our 29th wedding anniversary, and I often tease her that she always steals my lines. Like, I'll hear her talking to other people. I'm like, I say that. That's my thing. And she'll always go, well, we've been together for so long. Of course I'm going to sound like you from time to time. And so you earlier mentioned the fact that you're, military spouse. How did that sort of like bleed into your leadership style? Because I'm curious, because I'm sure not your husband didn't come home and start like barking orders like he like in the military, but I'm sure there's like that essence or aura that kind of comes off and then sort of leaches itself onto the people around them.
Sure. There's a plaque I put in our house. Literally, as soon as you walk in the door, you see it. And I did it on purpose when my husband retired from 31 years in the military. It says, a veteran lives here with his commander in chief. Me. Okay. So I always wanted to make sure. And we have actually been married 45 years. So we've gone on the gamut, raised the kids, had over 22 moves in the military. Being a military spouse, it's a culture. The military is a culture of leadership. It is, no matter what, even all the way down to the privates. Everybody has a leadership role. Everyone has something that they are in charge of, and it may just be cleaning the toilets, for goodness sakes, in the barracks. But everybody has something they're in charge of, and I think they do that from a very early age. So definitely, my leadership style has been formed a lot from the United States Army, and all the different volunteer positions I had along the way, all the moves, all the things that just needed to be done. The company now is probably 85% military spouse and veteran employees. And I love that I'm able to give that back. The experiences that I was able to get with big companies, moving all those times that took a chance on me, I make sure that I pass that on, because they are such unique thinkers. They're out of the box thinkers. They make things happen. They just make things happen.
That's great. And I know we've kind of like touched upon a lot of this during our conversation today, Deb, but the book Leadership Attitude, how would you define a leadership attitude? Like what's a simple way, or maybe even not a simple way, to define what leadership attitude means?
It's an individual attitude. I mean, we're beginning to start our podcast as well, and it's all about the leadership attitude. What is your attitude? What is your attitude today? Was it always that attitude? And I think, is your attitude to help others? Is your attitude to be in charge? What is it? When we first started trying to come up with a title, and we struggled. I mean, like most book writers, I had this weird business name I thought it was going to be, and it didn't even, the whole book didn't even turn out anything like what I was imagining it. So I know that it was Holy Spirit led, but a friend of mine, we talked a lot about the fact that leadership is not a title, it's an attitude. It's an attitude. And so from that, we kind of took it from, well, Jesus and his Beatitudes. Okay. So let's go further and make it, what is your attitude as a leader? And should it change? Mine did. I'm sure others did as well.
It is funny how, they say the youth is wasted on the young, or the other cliche of like, I wish I knew now what I knew then. It's almost like, sure, we made a lot of mistakes in our early days, but also, would we be as like improved or our highest level of ourselves if we didn't go through that? So it sucks, but that's sort of like, it's like, you think back of like high school, like, man, it was terrible high school, and every day was like the end of the world, and now you look back and you're like, what was I freaking out about? Are there days like that as a leader where you like things that have popped up that you might have done and you like start beating yourself up? Like, I always joke, like the old flagellate thing about like you whip yourself you punish yourself for the mistakes. Do you do that?
Sure. I mean, first of all, I'm a CPA by trade, Joe. So I grew up in the CPA Big Four accounting firms as a female in the 80s and 90s. My role was to be as aggressive as heck, never say no, and to keep going until someone told me to stop. That's not a good role for a leader. That's great for a task oriented. It's great for a staff, great for getting, the business in. But what about the people? And I missed that. And I didn't have good mentors who helped me understand that. To be honest with you, a lot of my mentors came from books. I started mentoring myself, later in life with Bob Maxwell and all the other great leaders out there who've done books that really kind of showed me, what? It really is time to slow down and think about other people, because as the leader, you shouldn't be the one getting it done. I'll never forget that when I was the senior manager at KPMG, one of my partners told me, they called me up to go, why are you 70% chargeable? I go, should I be more? I go, you should be about 50%. You're the leader. Why aren't you out there getting business and letting somebody else actually do the work? And they were right. They were absolutely right. And I think that leaders, we have a hard time sometimes letting go because, well, we know. How do you think we got there? We got there because we knew what to do. But we have to be the ones to pass that on and make sure others learn how to do it, because let's face it, I don't plan to work until I drop dead. I don't think any other leader out there does. So I hope that's what my legacy will be, that they were able to take on new responsibilities, learn things that they never knew before, and do amazing things with them.
That's so cool. How did you learn to delegate? Because it sounded like you probably weren't a very good delegator early on in your career. And that's what I know. People say, what are your faults? I have trouble delegating and it's not that I don't trust anyone. It's just that I feel like no one is going to care as much as I do. And I'm sure as an entrepreneur, you probably get that when you first start your company. I'm like, oh God, or, I'm going to, this company's going to be, running through my veins. But like when I hire someone, it could just be a job. So how did you learn to become better at delegating? And maybe some tips for me or someone watching us is, because for Deb, it's really, really difficult for me.
It's tough. I think, Joe, the best thing, coming back to how we do our assessments, right? When we first have someone come in, is I find out what makes them tick, what excites them. If there's someone who really likes a whole lot of details and man, they love spreadsheets, guess what I'm going to give them? Absolutely. We're going into accounting. That's where you're going, and you're going to do spreadsheets and you're going to do the task. Or if you're someone that just loves to really talk to people and you get excited with talking to people, then I might put you in people development. So I try really hard to figure out what makes them tick as a person, because if I can motivate them just as a person, they're going to be a phenomenal employee for us.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Good advice. All right, cool. I always wrap up these conversations, Deb, by talking about the dedication and going behind the dedication. And we've already talked about your fine husband a bunch, but I just want to read the first line to Mark. Thank you for being my friend, confidant, husband, mentor, and father to our three sons. Your leadership and unique way of living your truth every day has been my inspiration. So, as I wrap these up, why was it important to dedicate this book to Mark?
Like we got married as teenagers. Okay. So definitely for us, my leadership is a lot based on who he is and the truths of the person that he is. And he is so genuine. What you see is what you get with Mark McGee. Always has been, always will be. I was just at an event recently where someone came up to me and they go, the whole success of this program, and it was a multi-billion-dollar program, really is because of the leadership of your husband. And I thought, thank you. That's the leader I want to be. That's the one I want to emulate. Him and business Jesus. But yeah.
She is Deborah E. McGee, the author of The Leadership Attitude, Inspiring Success Through Authenticity and Passion. Deb, thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
And that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to find out more information on Deborah and our other fine authors, go to theauthoritycompany.com.